Welcome into the Awesemo Betting Show right here on the Awesemo Odds channel. Appreciate you rolling with us, myself, Ben Rasa, for the next 30 or so. And look, a lot to look at over the weekend. It wasn't necessarily the best weekend that I think either one of us had. Jordan is in the house producing. Seems like he may have had a better weekend overall. I'm not positive. Maybe it was just because he wasn't inundated in all the bad bets that we had. But on top of that, Ben, we are back, short memory and all, with Monday Night Football, another edition of Lock It Up before we get out of here, another edition of the look ahead lines or anything else we can do to get away from last weekend. But before we do any of that, welcome, as always, because we need your advice to break out of whatever slump all of us were in over the weekend. And at least, my friend, we have some football to focus on tonight and wash and kind of cleanse our palate from what we dealt with over the weekend.
Every cheesy all the sayings, even though they at times feel hollow, they're all true. Trust the process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. All those little things you do have to tell yourself, because over the course of a betting season, you're going to have some weeks where it's a combination: bad picks, bad bounces, bad turnovers. And for me, I hit the full bingo card. There were a couple spots I really liked that I watched the game and I felt stronger about it than before I bet it, and it didn't get there. Then there were other spots where I said, how did I even land on this team? But you know what? Over the course of the season, when you zoom out, it's all about having more pluses than minuses. And I think today's a good opportunity to kind of restore what we're doing and get back at it.
So real quick, before we look at what's going on tonight, and we'll cover all our bases, not on the diamond, of course, but with Monday Night Football, BetMGM, we're going to tell you about some great opportunities there, and including, of course, the odds that they'll power the show with. I see Bloomfield and Methel, a couple of people already clamoring in here with some lock it up. So just wait, they're going to happen. But before all of that, give me one on Saturday, one on Sunday that you look back that was the biggest loss. For me, it was Florida. I had so much tied into Florida on Saturday and the Chargers on Sunday that I got my teeth kicked in.
I mean, it was so for me, like I said, there's two different types of situations. Like Florida, I don't really understand how they lost to LSU. That's just something that happened. A game that I
had them teased down, Ben.
Yeah,
and
they
it
gave
didn't
up 49
matter.
points. LSU's now running the ball, apparently.
They parted ways with their head coach. It's so bad.
Yeah, it was. So one of the key games for me was Wyoming, and that was a game that I watched, and I know you look at the final score and they scored no points, and you're like, well, but they turned the ball over 4 times in the game. They had 5 turnovers on the season. They held Fresno State to under 100 yards passing. All of those things were ample opportunities. That's one it's hard to be frustrated about, because 4 turnovers is ridiculous. And then I think the clear one for me, I went out, I got the Browns early, I beat the closing line, and they were not in the game. You can talk about the injuries to Chubb and the offensive linemen and whatnot, but they were just straight outplayed. So although you want to get the best lines, and over time that's going to add to some really good things, yesterday was not good. And then I see in chat, if you bet the Patriots yesterday, that is a tough one. To lose that spread in overtime, whew, that was gross.
I can't say anything negative about that game because I got in look ahead last week, and I think we might have talked about it on this show. If not, then it was somewhere else. But look ahead line last week, the Cowboys laid the 3. So I got in then, and then I jumped in live yesterday when they were down initially. So I got the Cowboys on the money line at even money. So I'm sitting there rooting away for the Dallas Cowboys. Now in a pick'em, completely separate from a bet, in a pick'em league where my father-in-law is watching the game alongside me last night, we both went in his league under. So that's really where I think people got, yes, Patriots, absolutely. But if you went under and you saw those tough 2 touchdowns, come on, Ben, in what, 20 seconds?
Yeah, Diggs scored, and then they scored on an 80-yard pass. And listen, these bounces, the thing to remember, it's just like for any poker players out there, you can recite all your ridiculously bad beats, and you rarely remember the times that you suck out. And it's the same story with this. All the things that I'm complaining about with Wyoming and the Brown, I've been on the other side of those games too, where the ball just bounces my way. And that's the key. You got to remember that you don't want to alter what you're doing. And that's really the mentality. I wanted to get that out because it's been an awesome betting year for me. This was a disaster week. It's not going to alter what I do on Monday Night Football. When we break down this game, it's the same approach as if we rock the weekend. You don't want to start tinkering if there's nothing wrong.
So real quick on that point, because I'm with you. Florida, for example, come on, that was ridiculous. I don't know how much I'm going to be looking at Florida betting moving forward. That was just a missed opportunity. Chargers, to your point, I'm not changing anything. My confidence isn't shaken in the Chargers. It was just a bad game. It was a letdown. But where I think there may be some room to maybe maneuver and abort and maybe jump ship, do you feel the same way about Cleveland moving forward after seeing Baker Mayfield just look absolutely atrocious?
So clearly, I still believe in parts that the Browns can be a pretty good team, but that's the Browns in theory right now. They've got to get Nick Chubb. They've got to get their tackles back. Having Baker to Donovan's Peoples-Jones be your go-to, target, that's just not going to work. You need Landry. No. You need these guys in there. And I didn't think that Arizona did anything special. They made the plays they had to, but guys like DeAndre Hopkins were wide open at times. The penalties, which some I thought were pretty bad calls, but that's not why they lost that game. So again, it's more about taking it week to week. The spreads are the spreads. If you can beat those lines, and listen, I crushed the closing line on the Broncos and the Browns.
Yeah.
I took bad lines on Missouri and Texas. So it's not just all rosy. There were some clear mistakes in there for me. And that's why you got to evaluate it straight up. And this game tonight, I think, provides an interesting opportunity. You've got two pretty solid AFC teams, and certainly Buffalo. You might have the MVP leader right now in Josh Allen.
He and Kyler Murray, absolutely. I think it's also worth looking at the game flow and kind of the script that we see play out. And if you're just joining us, you see in the chat, John Shelton already locking up Wake Forest. We love it when you hit us up with your lock it up, your confidence play of the night, of the week. You want to get ahead of a line 6-7 days from now. Absolutely. Let us know in the chat. And if you're watching post show, don't worry. We look at these. So leave us a comment with your lock it up as well. Hit that thumbs up button and please subscribe to the Awesemo Odds channel if you haven't. How do you see this game playing out? And I'll uncharacteristically throw a play out at you initially here, just because I think this is really where I see some room for maneuverability, and that's the first half. And no, I'm not going under because I know that I do that all the time here. That's Thursday night and maybe London. But in this case, I'm thinking, what's more likely to happen? The Titans coming from behind against this defense and against the Buffalo Bills in the second half and throwing a ton and all of a sudden closing a gap, or Bills on the road, prime time for the Titans. They start to get a little healthier here at the wide receiver position, a little bit healthier on D as well. I could see the Titans blowing a lead or holding a lead at the half, more so than I can see the Titans flat out winning this game. So that's kind of my game flow, game script. And the best bet that I can find on that from value would be just taking the Titans to win the first half straight up, money line at 160.
Okay, that's not bad. Yeah, you're getting 3.5 there, which is a very good number in the first half if you want to be less aggressive. Sure. You got 160 if you want to roll the dice. I do think that Tennessee is a very interesting team to break down. They're coming off, they lost to the Jets, then they responded against Jacksonville, and I think we both thought that they would. But at the same time, it's a team that we know they've got that type of mentality. They can beat anybody. I think they can lose to anybody, but I still believe that they're one of the more dangerous teams. Now, their defense, I'm not sure how they're going to stop Josh Allen at times. 28th in the league in passing yards allowed per attempt at 7.9. They're in the bottom half of rushing defense as well. So it seems like at home, though, getting healthier, they're going to have a fighting chance. The spread feels about right. I do lean kind of to taking the points in this game, and it's just because I respect both teams. I think Buffalo's a very, very good team. But, man, it's not the easiest situation in Arrowhead, and then you turn around and you go to Tennessee. That's a tough 2-0 stretch if you're able to do it.
Yeah, for your defense, I think is where this becomes interesting as far as a matchup for Buffalo, right? Clearly, this defense has answered the bell when it came to the Chiefs, but it wasn't easy. And it's a tough matchup against that type of passing offense. Now you have the opposite. Granted, you've got talent at the wide receiver position here, but I don't know how much you have faith in a Ryan Tannehill, not anywhere near even Patrick Mahomes on a bad day. Point being, though, is that you go from defending a super legit pass offense to now having to defend the polar opposite with a run offense, which is Derrick Henry. So on the road as well for 2 straight games here for Buffalo, not easy by any means. And if you're taking the points at home for the Titans, you're in really good shape, I think, overall, because it's going to be hard, I think, for Buffalo just to get out. That's why I like the Titans in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, again, Buffalo, they're a very, very good team. And week one, you're going to see this in the NFL. The week one game against Pittsburgh, I don't know how we really link that up to much. It just happened, and they've responded very well
Block
since
punt.
then.
Yeah,
exactly. Like it just happens. Weird things are going to happen in games that are only run once. It's not like we simulate the game 100 times. It doesn't work like that. So
right.
I look at it here. You've got Derrick Henry. You've got the guys on the outside. I think Tannehill is serviceable for sure. It's just, to me, at the type of game, first of all, it's a healthy total, and it should be. These are fast-paced teams. Tennessee runs the most plays in the league right now, and Buffalo's in the top 5. I think it's a pretty good live betting opportunity because of the ebbs and flows. You know, if you have a spread, a total, say it's like 40, 41, 42, any touchdown is really important. But when you're getting north of 50 like this, it's very possible that whoever receives the opening kickoff marches down and gets points. I don't think that makes that team that much more likely to actually win the game, but the spread will react. It's one of those situations you're going to be able to counterpunch in a game like this. So I think both Tennessee and Buffalo will have ebbs and flows where maybe they score 2 or 3 unanswered in terms of times, but that doesn't mean that the game is over just yet. So if a team like Tennessee starts a little slow and I get the spread, say like 10.5, something like that, I may look to add to the Titans because I think this is going to be a competitive game tonight.
Do you think the total moves much? Let's just look at that. Let's say the Bills or the Titans, doesn't matter which team in this case, gets the opening kickoff, they move down the field, and they score a touchdown. Do you see that total bumping up, even if it's to 57, 58.5? I see it competitive with you as well, but I don't necessarily see a shootout. So I would be inclined, if it moved even to 58, I would be inclined to go live under on that. I don't know. The Titans scoring 28, 30 points tonight seems ambitious.
I do think the total, of course it's going to react. There's no doubt about it. I don't think it'll be wild swings because, again, they're already budgeting for a lot of points. You need touchdowns when you're talking about a 53.5 point total. It's a product of, I don't know if Tennessee only has one way to win at this point, and it's to outscore. I'm not sure if their defense is really built to do anything else. So when we get into the player pops on this game, I still like plenty of the Bills overs, even though I think Tennessee's got a chance in this game. And that just speaks to, I'm not sure the Titans defense is really set up to cause a ton of problems for what Josh Allen and Diggs and these guys are going to bring to them.
Do you see any slower attempt on either offenses? And again, it's prime time. Not that totally is I shouldn't even use that as a frame here, so forget that. But do you see anything with either of these two teams? Because both can do it. Both can keep the ball. Both can extend drives. Both can keep the other team's offense off the field. And at that point, if we're seeing longer drives, even if they do correlate into a touchdown, it's like a basketball game where the clock keeps running. We're going to see a lot of attention to the ground. Both teams have the ability to throw. Don't get me wrong. Both teams have quarterbacks who can throw, but they're also, with Buffalo and the Titans, you could see them being run heavy as well. And that's going to move the clock. And that may indicate how you look at the total, even if it's a first half total.
Yeah, I think particularly if you think Tennessee starts fast, that helps the under. That would be my perception of it, because they're the type of team, if they are winning and they are controlling, just to give you kind of an indication, I don't think this is the end all be all, but let's dive into it a little bit. Tennessee right now, plays per game, 73. That is number one in the NFL. So they're running a ton of plays, but they're only averaging 5.3 yards per play, and that is down at 23rd in the league. So it's the type of offense right now. They are running a lot of plays, but they're not necessarily chunk plays. It's not a very high octane offense. They're ground and pound with Derrick Henry, play action over the top, get the tight ends involved, things of that nature. So if they're controlling, I do think you'll see a lot of plays, and that'll help the under. Whereas the Bills to me are more, over the top, higher octane type with Josh Allen take some chances down the field. That could lead to a lot of points quickly.
Yeah. And before we hit a player prop or 10, I'm thinking about the Bills and their schedule here. And it's not to take away from anything at all, but look, the Steelers game aside, I'm with you there. We'll move that away. They were able to dictate whatever the hell they wanted against bad football teams. They were able to, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but they lured the Chiefs into a shootout, and it didn't work for Kansas City because their defense is so good. I don't know. I mean, could you see a similar game? 38-20 is that Chiefs-Bills game. I could see something similar to that tonight. Now, that's going to go over. That's going to go over the total there, 58 total points. But if you're right, where the Bills are going to dictate their own tempo and going to dictate how they want to score points, then I think what we're going to see is the Titans are just going to be unable to break out of whatever little barrier that the Bills defense have put them in. And meanwhile, Buffalo might put up 35-38.
I mean, is that possible? Certainly. I think that's a very reasonable game script and scenario. I think there's more likely scenarios where Tennessee is able to look good enough in the first half where they keep this game at a reasonable pace, and they're able to really lean on Derrick Henry, and they keep the game more competitive than that. If Buffalo is able to open it up early, I think that really speaks to the over, as you just talked about in that scenario, and just the Titans being forced to, it's not like they can't throw the ball. Listen, Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback and he's got weapons, but I think we all know that Derrick Henry is the focal point. They're not going to abandon him regardless, but at the same time, I think really wearing down Buffalo's defense, particularly up front, is what they want to do. And that takes a running back and a running game plan of 4 quarters. You gotta do that in the first half so it pays off in the second half, but you got to get to the second half with a chance for it to really pay dividends.
Titans, Bills, HTFT plus 600. Just something to think about. If you think the Titans can keep this thing close, it's going to happen in the first half. And I would think that both the Titans have a chance to win the first half based on your breakdown, and that it's going to be more of a lower scoring first half. Just something to think about based off of what you said. I'm just taking what you said here. So don't.
No, I think that Tennessee, they're a tough team to evaluate because it's a couple narratives, and I don't even want to say they're narratives. I think they are based in some facts. That Buffalo is the type of team that is really built to bludgeon inferior teams. When they get up against teams that can't handle them, they look phenomenal. They win going away. Then there's other teams like Tennessee. To me, they're more of a flatline team. It doesn't matter if they're playing the best team in the league or the worst team in the league. They kind of just do what they do. They're not reflective. They almost play to the level of competition, good and bad. And we saw that with a loss against the Jets. And Tennessee's the type of team that I think they could beat, top end opponents at any given time. So it's one of those type of teams. Whereas to me, when Buffalo gets control of a team, they really whip them. And I think that sometimes can mask that when they get up against really good teams, it's not that simple, of course. And Tennessee's a good team. I really respect them. I think they will be ready to play at home today.
Wow. Flyers over under 5.5. I see that.
Against the Kraken.
Look at this, man. We're getting our NHL beak wet. We're doing something right here. So let's look at a couple of player props. And why don't you begin? Because I've looked at a couple of really, I think 2 jump out at me. Then I'm going to hit you with the long shot of the night. And this isn't as big of a long shot as plus 10K like last Monday night, but I think this actually has a decent shot of hitting. So why don't you break it off first and give us all your top player prop tonight?
So let's get into it. I'm going to go to the Bill side of things. And what we saw, a concerted effort, and this is why. Look at this. This line has already moved in my favor from the breakfast menu this morning that was filmed with Josh Engelman on this very channel. if you have not subscribed, before I dive into this player prop, I just want to say that's why you want to subscribe to the channel, because we have content dropping throughout the day and these odds move. And we are marching to almost 2,000 subs in a short amount of time on this channel. Very exciting. So be part of that. If you enjoy us, we've made you some money along the way. We'd really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button. But Josh Allen's rushing prop last week against the Chiefs, he was very, very active on the ground. He had 11 carries for 59 yards. They really made it a focal point. Now, I don't think they want him taking double-digit carries unless they have to. But this number is at 32.5 right now. It was 31.5 this morning when I bet it. He's gone over that in 4 of 5 games pretty comfortably, actually, so far this season. And when you look at the attempts on the year, he's got 5 or more attempts in 4 of those 5 games. I think both of those are recipes for success. And in a game that I expect to stay somewhat competitive, I think Josh Allen, again, is a factor in the ground game. Give me over 32.5 to get my player prop card started.
Does it not seem a little low to you? Almost like maybe red flag low to you? 32.5?
I mean, I do think my biggest concern is volume, as it always is
right.
They don't want Josh Allen running wild unless he has to. Against the Chiefs, that is a big game. They had him running designed runs all the time in that game. I'm not saying we're going to see that, but Josh Allen is still the type of quarterback. He is pretty eager to pull it down and make a play. I don't know if you're going to be able to curtail that. And you don't need that many times for him to do it when you're asking him to get more than 32.5 yards. Look, it's down to 31.5. Look, it's changing on the fly. You see that?
You know what? This is what you do, Ben. You move numbers. Somebody saw the breakfast. Honestly, somebody saw you and Josh. Exactly. All I was going to say this. All right. Before I hit you with one, let's keep it with that quarterback prop, as Jordan has it up there on BetMGM behind us. Blitz, and we have to give credit here because Tannehill rushing is 15.5. And then on the chat, Blitz, Tannehill only rushed under 16 yards just one game this season so far. I didn't like that prop until I saw that from Blitz in the chat. And now I'm thinking that's pretty juicy right there, especially because the number seems a little bit lower when you put it in perspective of what he's done on the ground, Ben.
Yeah, so he's another one. You're really not going to get, I would say, maybe one designed run if you're lucky. It's going to have to be on more broken type plays. It's a pretty low number, though. So go ahead.
Here's what I would say. You just mentioned the golden phrase right there, which is broken plays. Now, coming into this game, so it hasn't really been adjusted since we saw games on Sunday, but the Titans offensive line is like one of the worst statistically, metric wise, including giving up the most sacks in the NFL. So wouldn't it stand to reason that Ryan Tannehill, more so than any other time, because they're going up against a better defense, would be running for his life with the combination of that Bills defense, which is insanely good, we know from a statistical standpoint, and how bad his offensive line is in front of him? Even if I only get one, maybe two at most design runs for Tannehill, the probability of him breaking free and trying to just create something out of nothing is higher, I think, than it's ever been this year for him.
I do think that is a good point. We used that way back in the Giants versus Washington game where we talked about, Daniel Jones, it might be a good thing for his rushing prop that he's under so much pressure because it forces you to do something. And if you take a sack, you don't lose the rushing yards on that. Right now, team sack percentage, Buffalo is 6th. They are getting some heat on quarterbacks. When they drop back, they have a pretty good chance to get after them. So I get that. I do think both quarterbacks will be willing to get mobile. And we're just seeing that so many teams, it's so difficult to stop. You're not planning for it. Most defenses, they only scheme and have a spy for the Lamar Jackson types. And more we're seeing you need a spy for almost every quarterback because the ability to pick up 6, 8, 10 yards and slide is so appealing and so dangerous.
Let me hit you with Ryan Tannehill in the air. And this is where I think the same thing, I'm not going to give you anything more than what I just laid out. Ryan Tannehill is going to be under pressure. Ryan Tannehill is going to get sacked. Ryan Tannehill is going to make some bad throws. That was at 237.5 when I put this thing together about an hour and a half ago. It's now bumped up to 241. I didn't bet it then, but I feel even better because it's moved clearly in the way that I want it to without betting it. If I bet it, then I'd feel a little bit worse. But under 241 passing yards, I know it seems on the surface not that high of a number. But again, Derrick Henry being the key cog here, I don't think that there are going to be a ton of huge X plays deep downfield to either of the two big receivers. As you mentioned, the metrics of how they kind of move the football doesn't really lend to these huge, big chunk plays downfield. 241.5 for Ryan Tannehill with everything working against him. I'm going to ride that wave and go under.
So I think the key here is maybe ironically, how good do you think the Titans play? Because the numbers already bear this out. Titans this year, when they are comfortably winning games, they beat Jacksonville by 18 points. Tannehill threw the ball 22 times. They beat the Colts by 9 points. Tannehill threw the ball 27 times. They lost to the Jets. He threw the ball 49 times. And that's the type of volume that you don't want to see. So if you think that they can hang into the games, and obviously there's a middle ground too, but if you think that Tennessee is keeping contact and really running advantageously, it helps a lot because Ryan Tannehill is one of the quarterbacks. His volume fluctuates wildly. There are scenarios mid-20s in attempts. There's also scenarios where he throws the ball upwards of 50 times, and that is a recipe for disaster because he's going to average more than 5 yards per attempt.
I think we need to rebrand this show. John Shelton's right on the chat. It's no longer the Awesemo betting show. It's the quarterback rushing prop show.
It has been this year. Honestly, what it should be rebranded, even though it was a rough weekend. The one thing that still cashes, Jamar Chase over longest reception. It has cashed every single week this year. It is crazy how good he is and how often they give him chances over the top. Not really relevant.
Remember, was it Friday or Thursday that you gave a juicy futures play for Rookie of the Year?
Yeah. And again, Trevor Lawrence did win a game finally, but I think Jamar Chase, 4-2. The Bengals, if they make the playoffs, Jamar Chase is going to win that award. Chase
is like first or second all time with this many receiving yards through these many games since the Super Bowl era. Did you see that stat?
He's quite good. Yeah. I mean,
come on. You can't ignore that, even though he's not a quarterback.
No, I mean, it's funny. Listen, Justin Jefferson is absolutely fantastic. But that LSU team that had both of them, Jamar Chase was the guy. Everyone forgets that. It was Jamar Chase, but they've been great. Honestly, it's a pretty decent segue. And even if it's not, I'm going to just make like it was.
Please do.
Let's talk about Stephon Diggs tonight. To catch the first touchdown, to score the first touchdown, you don't even have to catch it. 8-1, anytime TD score, -115. I know he hasn't been prolific in finding the end zone, but this is still a guy that commands massive target share. 3 of 5 games over 10 targets. They didn't really need him against Kansas City in a lot of ways. They were in control. I think that Diggs has a pretty big game tonight. If you're going to give me 8-1, I'm going to splash there. I think anytime touchdown score is pretty favorable to him. I like him to find the end zone tonight.
Well, 8-1 on first TD, -115 on anytime, right?
Yep. Both of those.
Okay. Yeah, I think anytime TD, I'm actually surprised it's not closer to Henry as -150 to -160. So on the surface, you look at it and think, all right, well, -115, you're still laying really for an anytime TD score. But at the same time, in comparison to it, like Derrick Henry feels more of a true line that you'd stay the hell away from.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. Listen, Derrick Henry, obviously, barring them really not getting anything going, any pass interference in the end zone, any long drives, he's going to have 1, 2, maybe even 3 chances from the 1-inch line, and he normally converts. Yep. The thing with Diggs, though, I think that you can always buy low on these guys that command massive target share and just haven't scored for whatever. He has 1 touchdown on the year. That's just variance. He's still a guy who's getting a ton of targets. He's got 46 targets through 5 games. If he sees another 9 or 10 tonight, there is no reason why he shouldn't have at least a couple of red zone looks. And it tells the story. The Bills are a 6-point favorite. He is the most likely scorer from Buffalo. I know they have a lot of weapons, but just look at the anytime touchdowns. You've got him ahead of Island, Sanders, Knox, all those guys. So I still think Diggs is the alpha on this team.
Also, just to look at something really quick, as I see Blitz mention that Tom Brady rushing prop. And that's why we told you, you always go over the half. You never go over the 1.5. If Tannehill loses this rushing prop because they kneel to end the game, then so be it. I mean, it wasn't 1.5. It wasn't 2.5. It's 15.5.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a total kick in the stones.
Oh, no. I mean, that's a lot more pertinent when your guy realistically is only going to get a couple yards. Like
Right.
Tannehill could have 25 yards on one carry. Like you can't worry about kneeling in that situation. But the Tom Brady one, that was
brutal.
We said it. You got to be worried about the kneel downs with guys like that. It happens.
Emmanuel Sanders over 22.5 longest reception. 3 of 5 games this year, he's gone over 23 yards as his longest reception. One other game, so 4 of 5, he's hit 20 at least. That other game was 21. I'm going to take a shot here against the Titans secondary, especially with all of the attention paid on not only your guy in Stephon Diggs, but your other guy in Dawson Knox. I think there's a pathway here to a couple of longer shots for Emmanuel Sanders downfield, especially, Ben, because we've already seen him do that and hit that number at least 3 of 5 times this year.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. As we talked about, Tennessee, they are 28th, 7.9 yards allowed per passing attempt. They're giving up splash plays. Dawson Knox, that guy
Dawson, did I say Dustin? Sorry.
Yeah, it's all deadly. Dawson Knox has been fantastic, but I still think you have to dig in a little bit and realize that he's just running really hot with the touchdowns right now. He's got 5 touchdowns in 5 games, and I know they look to him, but I think some of that is going to regress. They're giving Sanders ample targets behind Diggs, of course, but he's still seen 5 or more targets in every single game. You mentioned he's cashed this 3 of 5, and the other game was right on the number, basically. So no problem with that. It didn't stand out to me, but if I was betting it, I'm going over with you. I think that really anything with the Bills speaks more to splash plays. Anything with the Titans feels more volume based, like Derrick Henry having 30 touches tonight, things of that nature.
Is there any other player prop before we go back to Knox and I hit you with a long shot bet?
No, I think for me, it's a very showdown mentality for the betting market today. And what I mean by that is try to figure out how you see the game going and then think about which players benefit the most if you're right. If Tennessee starts fast, I think it benefits Derrick Henry in particular, and it hurts the over. It helps, to me, Josh Allen running, Diggs over the top, things like that. If the Bills are controlling, then it devolves, and I think that A.J. Brown, Julio, Ferkster, you could see a multitude of guys have to drop back and receive catches from Tannehill because he's throwing the ball 40, 50 times. I don't think that's the most likely scenario, though. So I'm basing most of what I've done here today on the fact that Tennessee plays them pretty competitive throughout.
You mentioned Knox and what you anticipate to be a regression back to the
I would
mean.
think.
Right, you would think. So I'm going to take a risk, but at the same time, I think that there is pretty good value here for something that if you just looked at comparing the anytime numbers to what you get on a return of 2+, it works to your favor. So the long shot of the night I throw at you, Ben Rasa, would be Knox 2+ touchdowns tonight. Again, assuming that he doesn't, the wave doesn't catch up to him and he continues to dominate and punish defenses. And to be fair, and I got to credit Greg Ehrenberg so he doesn't think I stole this from him, but he put a tweet out last night that I think is entirely accurate, which is tight ends on the main slate, and it's like that small little dog, and then tight ends on the showdown slate, and it's like this huge big beast, right? So I'm going to ride that same wave of momentum there and say Knox 2+ TDs is +630. His anytime is +130. You combine 130 twice, you're getting it like +439. So with the 2+ touchdowns, I'm getting a pretty good, nearly 200 points of value right there on the return, as opposed to just taking it, anytime and obviously looking at that combined for 2. That would be the long shot of the night. It's +630 for a reason. I'm not telling you to lock it up, but I feel a little bit better about that than the +10K long shot we hit last Monday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, does it have a shot? Knox has done this in a game already. There's no doubt, and Josh Allen could easily throw 3 or 4 touchdowns here. It's unlikely, of course. What I'd counter with, I think there's always room for bets like this on the card. I personally think that there's a better chance that Stefan Diggs scores the first touchdown of the game than something like this happening. And I'm getting 8-1 there. So it's more just how would I want to allocate my money? I have no problem with that. And to your credit, you've had a knack for these like multi-touchdown games. A lot of guys have scored early. They've had their chances. Jalen Hurts comes to mind, a couple others. So nothing wrong with that play. I think for me, the one exotic play, the long shot, low probability is Diggs to grab the first touchdown of the game tonight.
I'm going to play that because you came back to that twice now. So
I just 8-1. I feel like it's a situation, this is how I try to evaluate things like this. Stefan Diggs to me is not less likely to score tonight because he only has one touchdown on the year. But I think the books are lining this based off the fact that he only has one touchdown on the year. And I think that's where the edge is. Him scoring in one of those games early in the year, if he had 3 touchdowns, I don't think it makes him more or less likely tonight, but I bet this number would be plus 600, plus 550. And to me,
right,
Diggs is still Diggs, and I will continue to buy on him long term.
Do you look at this and, if I'm staking these individually and I place a unit on it, and if it's $100 to 25 to 10, whatever your size of preferred unit may be, I'm thinking I'm going to go anytime TD score, which I think has a great probability of happening, and also take the plus 800. So in my mind, right, worst case scenario outside of just losing both would be that you've covered your bet placement for the plus 800 with the high probability that at some point tonight he's going to score a touchdown.
Yeah, like how I envision myself doing something like this. And there's no right or wrong in terms of sizing.
But we try to get inside your head here.
Yeah. So like if I was going to put a standard unit on Diggs anytime, minus 115, so I would bet 1.15 units to win one. I would probably put, say, like a quarter, 0.25 in addition on Diggs plus 800. So total, we're talking about 1.4 units. If he scores anytime, I'm coming out with a 0.75-ish win. And if I hit both, I'm coming out certainly ahead, basically a 3-unit win. So that's how I would do it. Usually like a quarter to a half on some of those longer shots. And then, depending on the bet, one or multiple units on the standard type bets.
There's one look ahead line before we lock it up and get out of here that I wanted to throw at you. I don't know if you've looked at anything so far. I did jump in on a couple of things just ahead of time because I wanted to get in. I thought maybe this thing would move. The biggest one for me, as I'm pulling this up just because I want to make sure that I have the actual number in front of me. Okay. The biggest one for me was the Panthers only laying 2.5 in New York. And I think it's reactionary to see the Panthers. Oh, they took a loss. That defense at the final drive that ultimately cost them the game should be ashamed of themselves. But I think the bigger thing that was more sustainable is that Sam Darnold finally broke out of this. He seems like the Jet Sam Darnold. I love the Panthers on the road. Under 3, I jumped in minus 2.5. That's the only thing I wanted to bring up on a look ahead.
And there you go. You've already, and it's early, maybe it swings back, but look at it right here. Carolina Panthers minus 3. That's all you can ask for. It doesn't mean they're going to win. I had the Browns minus 2.5. It closed at 3.5. They got run off the field, but I'll take that every single day of the week. And so should you, if you're able to capture that. So I have no feel on that game. Haven't looked in, but clearly initially, and it's only Monday, you're on the right track because you're to move to 3 is certainly what you want to see. And I hope when we do this show on Thursday, Carolina's 4.5, and you're going to feel absolutely fantastic about that number. And that's go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
I'm just rambling. So jump on in.
No, but I thought you had this perfect pause where I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
You are all good.
You
my
tell
friend.
us. Lock it up. All right, let's get out of here, right?
What do you got?
Well, I was looking at the chat and I saw a couple real quick to hit on. I know over 44.5 rushing yards for Zach Moss seems like a lock for John Shelton. Any quick thoughts on that?
So Moss is a guy, late in the Kansas City game, they were very happy to lean on him to salt that game away. And I do think if Buffalo is in firm control, that's when they're going to Josh Allen running is much less likely in those situations. Zach Moss running much more likely. So I see how you get there. Him and Singletary, it does seem like they prefer Moss in terms of the ground game.
Shelton's locking up Wake -3 versus Army. I don't know if this is going to make betting you this Wednesday.
Maybe. Wake is still quietly doing their thing. Army doesn't throw. So that's a wrinkle that I always worry about teams. Because when do you practice that? Not to go on a tangent, but practicing for Army is a completely different situation. Do you start doing that in the offseason, like one day a week, just to get ready for this game? Or do you right after your game in the previous week say, okay, we're gonna try to learn a new thing, a new defense for one game? It's a little awkward because the way Army attacks with the triple option, they don't see anyone like that. Georgia Tech in the ACC used to run it. They have transitioned to a normal offense. So this could be Wake's first opportunity against a team like this. That always scares me, but Wake is a very good team.
Hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. Roger Evans on the way out. You guys suggest teasing the Bills +1 with over 46.5 points. So you've dropped the Bills. Now, what's the return on that? Because you've improved your scenario 2 times over. I'm guessing that you're definitely laying some juice for that, right?
It's probably like 130. Yeah, I mean, it's a 7-point teaser. I'll say this. I have no problem using the Bills and some of that stuff if you think they win the game, even though I kind of lean Tennessee with the spread.
-140. Thanks, Roger.
Yeah, 140. There you go. I would, and Eitan, you and me have talked about this actually, in our, trying to nail it down, I should say. Teasing totals, not the greatest move. You give up a lot of value there. It's much better to tease sides. So just, obviously you can always do things. It's your money, but I would strongly suggest looking into teasing totals is very, very murky, and you do give up significant expected value.
All right, my friend, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Go back to where we began here on this game. Lock it up. Titans win the first half, money line
like that.
+160. I'm going to be a little aggressive here and not take the 3.5. Money line +160. Lock it up.
I have no problem with that. I kind of hope that happens because I think it helps my lock it up, which is Josh Allen rushing for 32 or more yards.
Nice.
In a game that's competitive, if they are trailing, that is when they're going to give him carries. We saw it against Kansas City. I think we see it here. The game stays close. Josh Allen will carry the ball 5+ times. It'll equate to 32 or more yards. Lock it up.
Love it. Hit that thumbs up button. Appreciate everybody here riding with us. Make sure you're subscribed to the Awesemo Odds channel. Hit that link below, and it's going to take you to BetMGM, and you can sign up. You're going to get 3 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum. It's insane. Just bet $10 at BetMGM. You can get that risk-free bet up to $1,000. All right, Rasa, we're back on Thursday. Anything you want to hit on the way out? Now's the time.
No, same always. As always, love doing this show. Appreciate you guys. Hit that subscribe button on the way out, and we will be back Thursday with more bets here at Awesemo Odds.
Have a great day. Thanks to Jordan for producing BetMGM. Thanks to you out there. We'll see you Thursday.